All right. Well, welcome back. This is part two, and I hope it's the end of this particular section on genre. Some of you have wondered. Um, I only recently found out that this little cat, this is Cassie. She doesn't know where to look. Showed up in one of my lectures a few weeks ago. I didn't know that actually either. It's funny. I usually watch the first minute or two, make sure it recorded okay, and then I just post it. And one day I actually was watching through, and I went, "Oh, wow, Cassie made a little cameo appearance." So, anyways, some of you might want to know. Some of you might not like cats, but I won't hold that against you. Um, my kids love her, and my wife does, and I do too. So, anyways, we're going to wrap up the idea with genre here. Like I said, chapters 9 and 10, they do an excellent job in regards to defining this for you. But I wanted you to be aware of, particularly of the fact that genres are not necessarily fixed in stone. But they're also not arbitrary, and I'm not trying to be fuzzy here. But the reality is, we have certain kind of set genres that we understand socially, particularly here in the United States or even the Western world. If you refer, would you like to watch a Western tonight? We know, for the most part, what we're going to be getting into. Do you want to watch a drama tonight? We know what we're going to be getting into for the most part. But there are movies that just kind of defy these categories. One movie that comes to mind is a film from the 60s. It's called Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Learned to Love the Bomb. How I learned to stop worrying. How I stopped worrying and learned to love the bomb. It's by Stanley Kubrick. He's the director, and it's got an all-star cast. It's a fantastic movie, and to put it in a particular category is a little difficult. It's funny. There's a lot of funny things in a movie, so maybe it's a comedy, but it deals with a lot of dark issues. War, particularly nuclear war, the Cold War. It deals with lying and cheating and all sorts of various dark subjects. So sometimes we refer to these movies as dark comedies because they are dealing with the darker issues of life in a humorous sort of way. But it does deal with a lot about war. So maybe it's a war movie that's funny and it's kind of dark. Um, you see where it gets a little difficult. And you might be able to think of certain movies in your own mind, even recently, that have come out where you would say, let's take, for example, No Country for Old Men, that won Best Picture last year. Is it a Western? Well, it looks kind of like a Western. Is it because it's set in West Texas and with the typical, stereotypical Southwestern landscape and setting? But is it more of a detective, kind of police crime movie? Yeah, definitely has a police officer, sheriff investigating some murders and missing money. And Or is it kind of a horror movie because in some ways there's a murderer out there who's going around killing people left and right. He can never get caught. He shows up when you least expect him. And so it has some of those elements to it. So it would be difficult to have to put it in a perfect category. And so the reality is that I do want you to think about that sometimes these things are fuzzy. And that's okay. And then sometimes we push we introduce kind of new conventions, new icons into certain movies. Whereas a movie like No Country for Old Men or There Will Be Blood have Western kind of icons in them, particularly setting, sometimes subject matter. They also introduce something new to them. Particularly, both of those movies deal with a lack of redemption for the characters. We tend to, in Western movies, particularly cowboy movies, I guarantee you, almost every John Wayne movie wraps up. It might not be perfectly wrapped up, but we as an audience feel as if Justice has been served. The bad guy gets what he deserves. The good guy, even if he dies, he still has done good, and there's justice brought about, and in some way there is a form of redemption. No Country for Old Men, and another movie, There Will Be Blood, that came out just a year or two before that. It's hard. You'll be hard pressed to find redemption in those movies. They kind of just are. They kind of just end. And in some ways, they kind of just say, well, hey, that's life. It doesn't always wrap up so nicely. Doesn't mean they're not good movies. Doesn't mean that you can't enjoy them. But they are pushing the genre a little bit further than what we're used to, and it's interesting. I mean, that's art in the sense that it's always kind of looking to re-examine and redefine what it is, and sometimes that's what's reflective of our day and era. You go back to the 30s, 40s, and 50s, a cowboy movie has justice, right and wrong, redemption, big themes in that regard. You come forward into the 70s, particularly maybe 80s and 90s, and sometimes those genres are being pushed, particularly here in the last 10 years, where movies like Brokeback Mountain deal with Western cowboy themes, but also homosexuality. No Country for Old Men deal with Western themes, but it doesn't all wrap up so nicely. In fact, the lawman at the end of the movie is very confused as to what has happened and what has transpired. So anyways, when you go and do your assignment and looking at genre, there'll be some that'll be easy to define, and there'll be some that will be a little difficult to define. So I just wanted to bring that up as a bit of a discussion for you to think about. We use these conventions to help us categorize and to help us understand, to help us relate. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's a little fuzzy, but they are certain ways of categorizing movies for us. If you look at the big categories, and I'm going to click over here, you've got, your action movies, but sometimes they're known as disaster movies. Adventure, sometimes there's action adventure movies. Comedies, those probably are fairly simple, but then we also have these sub-genres of romantic comedies and dark comedies. They're drama movies, coming-of-age drama movies, crime movies, detective story, maybe courtroom dramas. There's the epic film, the Apocalypse Now, or the Gone with the Wind, or even more modern Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. And then you've got your gangster sort of movie that in old days meant more or less a kind of a mafia sort of story, but in modern days you could be dealing with street gangs. So you can see how those are always kind of redefining themselves and so forth. So if you look on that link that I give you that goes through various movie genres, and they give you examples for each one, I think that might be helpful for you to see. And I am trying to get back here to, there it is. We've got just about a minute here to wrap up. If you have any questions, you can email me. But your assignment is on the announcement section. It'll tell you where to go and how to get it to me. And we've only got one more class. This is week number 7. So we'll see you next week, and have fun at the movies.